Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Juicebox Podcast. Today is a best of episode. This is, episode 303. It was called Do Hard Things. It first aired on February 6th, 2020, and it's with Anne. This is a sad story, so ready yourself. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing people together to redefine what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Jalen. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14. He's 29 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. And then later at the end of this episode, you can hear my entire conversation with Jalen. To hear more stories with Medtronic Champions, go to medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or search the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform. US Med is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and we've been getting our diabetes supplies from US Med for years. You can as well. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Use the link or the number, get your free benefits check, and get started today with US Med. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 303 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode is titled Do Hard Things, and it's with Anne. You're going to get to know Anne in a second, but today's episode is a little different than some of the other ones in that it will handle the idea of tragedy, and we'll be having conversations about loss. Maybe don't listen with your kids. Maybe you want to. You should probably make that decision. I'm not sure how long this is going to go before you make me cry, but let's find out together. But I'm hoping no.
Or if I can get through it without crying.
100% think we're both crying. But so just so you can, so that you can be aware of what I'm waiting for. I'm really. I don't even know what to say about how amazed I am that you are doing this. I usually start the shows by having people just introduce themselves.
Okay. My name is Anne.
Okay, Anne. Listen. So, Anne, I received an email from you probably going back to the summer of 2019, I think. And your email started off so much like everyone else's. And, I'm sitting somewhere, doing something, and I get a note, and I look at it, and I start reading it, and I'm like, oh, this is a nice note. It's going to be about a nice thing. And it was about a really nice thing right up until it sort of wasn't. And then my wife looked over at me and said, are you okay? And I said, I just got an email. I don't know how to respond to it. So I guess let's start like this. You're married?
I am.
Okay. You have children?
3 amazing boys.
Okay.
The youngest of which was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2013.
And that's Adam.
Adam, yes.
So Adam was diagnosed in 2013. How old was he then?
He was 8 years old.
8. Okay. So, why don't we just talk about his diagnosis? How did it go?
Sure. Well, looking back on it, we think that it had maybe been going on for a while. There were many, as is very commonly the story, there were signs that in hindsight we thought, wonder how long this had been going on. The weekend that we took him, the Monday that we took him to the doctor followed a weekend in which he had run in a parade. There's a community parade that we have. The run was kind of a kickoff to the parade, and we would always have the boys run. It's about a mile run, and so all the boys did it. We met them at the finish line, and when Adam got to the finish line, he did the run, bless his heart, but he didn't collapse. He just sat down, and he had a really hard time getting up.
More so than your other 2 sons?
Oh, yes. Well, the others 2 were just, excited. They wanted to go see the parade. And Adam was just, he couldn't get up. So my husband and I looked at each other. My husband actually hoisted him onto his shoulders and ended up carrying him to our next point. But Adam was, yeah, we knew that something didn't seem right.
Yeah.
And so that was a Saturday. Monday, my husband and I had decided that we were going to take him in just for a checkup. And our amazing pediatrician, I think, listened to some of the things that had been going on and immediately had him did a urine test, detected sugar in the urine, and at that very moment diagnosed him with type 1 diabetes.
Prior to that, how long do you think you were seeing symptoms?
Well, it's really funny because this was Adam's second grade year, and earlier in the year, I want to say the fall, his teacher had asked me, he said, "Is Adam getting enough sleep? He seems really tired." And, I thought, wow. And apparently the teacher at one point had a conversation with Adam, and Adam said, at the time, all three boys were sharing a room. We had 4 bedrooms in the house. The boys shared one of the downstairs bedrooms. We had one of the downstairs bedrooms, and the upstairs we were using for a guest room and an office.
Right.
And Adam told the teacher, he said, "Yeah, my brothers keep me up talking at night." And so the teacher relayed this to me, and I immediately, within a very short time following that conversation, we ended up doing away with the guest room in the office, moved both of those things to another location, and had each of the boys have their own rooms. So, which I just thought was interesting. There were also a few instances of Adam having that year some unexplained stomach pain, and I don't know whether that was related to the type 1 or not, but we took him in a few times. It's the point where he was literally crying and doubling over and vomiting. He was diagnosed when we took him to the ER at one point with constipation. And I don't know whether that was a sign or not, whether that was, I don't know.
It's so hard to look back and figure it out, isn't it?
It is. But it was early on in his second grade year that I think, as far as our look back, it's when we kind of realized that, probably was happening for a while longer.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's crazy. So how did the first couple of, days and weeks go after you were diagnosed? How did you find the transition?
We were in shock. His diagnosis day, of course, was what we used to think of as the worst day of our lives. He was diagnosed in May, and it was towards the end of his second grade year. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, I thought I would go to his school every day because the school wasn't going to do any of his shots. So I thought I'll go to school every day and at lunch or, just be on call. I didn't live very far away, and would have been easy for me to just pop up and do all the shots. And so, we thought, okay, over the summer, we'll kind of transition him into doing this on his own. Well, we had an amazing school nurse who at one point had bribed Adam to do his shots on his own, unbeknownst to me. He ended up actually within, I want to say the first week back to school following the diagnosis, he ended up giving himself his own shots.
Wow.
And learning how to do it much more quickly than I had anticipated. And, bless his heart, he stepped up and did what he needed to do. And so, that obviously it was a time of shock, I guess, to a little bit, but we transitioned fairly well as far as, getting him to do the basics on his own.
Right. It's interesting, isn't it, that a person who's a little disassociated from the whole thing it's a much easier path for them to say, look, just give yourself the shot. And you're probably trying to protect him from whatever it is you're scared of in your mind, or, like making him grow up too fast or blah, blah, whatever it is we try to protect our kids from, I guess. It's very cool that the nurse was able to just say, look, you're probably gonna have to do this, so let's do it.
Yeah. We greatly appreciated that support.
Right. Did you guys have, did you transition to a pump at any point or glucose monitoring or anything like that?
The glucose monitor and pump actually did not happen until after I started listening to your podcast in 2016.
Oh my gosh.
We had ordered a Dexcom following the highest A1C that we'd ever had with him in, I want to say it was December of 2015. And we didn't have great support from his provider.
Mm-hmm.
The provider's office is actually 2 hours away, or was 2 hours away from the community that we were living in at the time. And so there wasn't a really, there wasn't great support there. They had mentioned to it following the one visit that we gone into where they told us that Adam's A1C December of 2015-ish was, I think, 9.5. And I remember feeling shocked when I heard that.
Was that a jump up? Had it been lower and it jumped on you?
It had jumped. And there were, I think, a few things that had led up to the jump. But yeah, it had jumped. It was higher than it had ever been. And it was kind of an afterthought. It wasn't even the provider herself. It was one of the nurse that was kind of checking us out of that appointment. She mentioned kind of as an afterthought, she's like, well, there is, this continuous glucose monitor that you could try. And I just said, I'm willing to do anything at this point. And so we ordered the Dexcom. They shipped it to us. And I remember thinking at the time, I wish I had read so much more. I mean, again, hindsight, but I remember thinking at the time, gosh, this is going to be something that actually sticks on him. It goes into his body. I don't want to, I didn't feel comfortable going through the process of putting it on him myself. Okay. And so we received it in December of 2015. I waited until April of 2016 when I knew I could get an appointment and drive across the mountains without, worrying about snow and bad roads. I waited until I could get an appointment at the Children's Hospital to be able to do a class to learn how to do it with someone else right there holding my hand. So I had gold sitting on a shelf for 5 months.
There's been a number of people on here who have talked about their insulin pumps being in drawers or their CGMs still in the boxes. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's incredibly uncommon.
Yeah.
But you look back and you think, well, geez, I'm interested in through those first number of years where you feel like you're doing, it's a very common thing for people. They feel like they're doing well, right? Because people are taking their shots, they're counting their carbs, but they're not having the results they're looking for, but they don't feel like I always have trouble making sense of that feeling of, oh, we were doing great. And like I was talking to somebody the other day who said, my A1C is 9, but my doctor always tells me I'm doing great. And I wonder, like, there's a disconnect there for me, but I do think they're doing great in one respect. I don't know why the sentence isn't usually, hey, you're doing great. You're doing the things you were asking you to do and everything, but here's what we could try to do, blah, 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 to move forward. Like, I don't know why that part never comes,
Yeah. The parts that always seem to come up in the visits with the ARNP would be, meeting with her, looking back, okay, 6 weeks ago from today at 4:15, why do you think we had this spike? And I just,
like, I don't know. It's too retrospective. Maybe it's, they just don't have enough. I don't know. They're not able to make that moment to moment decision.
Right.
All right, Ann, have we gotten to the part where we're going to start talking about why you're on the podcast? I think we have. I think we are. So you find the podcast. I'm assuming that gives you kind of the courage to put the Dexcom on him. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So I had taken the boys during our spring break to visit my brother in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And my sister-in-law kept saying, I heard on this podcast, and she would go in and tell me something kind of fun. And she kept saying that over and over and over. And I was finally like, okay, Jessica, what's the deal with your podcasts? And she showed me how to look at podcasts on my phone. And so it was that spring break trip where I'm like, I wonder if there's any podcasts on type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. And I immediately found yours. Yours is the first podcast that I set up on my phone. I listened to dozens of hours. And this was beginning to mid-April. And I knew I had the Dexcom sitting on our shelf at home. I knew that we had an appointment at the end of April to go to the Children's Hospital to take a class and help get that set up.
Right.
We got it set up. I got him set up with the Dexcom. Continued to listen to your podcast. I guess, sorry, I'm getting teary already thinking about.
I feel like I'm going to vomit if it makes you feel any better. So, and I've never been nervous making this podcast one time. So, I'll help you a little bit. So you Adam's A1C was like up in the 9s there, and you got some, you listened to the podcast for a while. You started getting his A1C coming down, and it was really a turnaround for him. His health was moving in the right direction, and you felt excited about it. And how long did you have that feeling? Like, how long were you able to live in that space?
So late April of 2016, we got him set up with the Dexcom. And for the next several months, we had the most success that we had ever had since the time of his diagnosis. Yeah. I came to be able to figure out things that you would talk about on your podcast, like, when he's playing competitive sports, his adrenaline is skyrocketing, and hence his blood sugars would tend to go up too. I'd start identifying things like that. I started playing with his basal insulin, being able to just make tweaks to give him the best shot for success. Yeah. We actually ordered an Omnipod as well. That came in late October. And so he had been using both the Dexcom and the Omnipod for about 2 months. And we had his next follow-up endo appointment on December 19th, which was the first day of Christmas break. We lived 30 minutes away from the office where we were going to be seen by the doctor. It was actually a telemed appointment because the doctor was in a children's hospital in Seattle. So on December 19th, we got in the car. It was supposed to just be Adam and myself. But I worked in the community that the appointment was in. And so the plan was Adam was going to spend the day with his cousins. And my middle son, Alec, had begged and begged and begged to come with us. They and the cousins are very close. Yeah. I relented. I let Alec come with us as well. So I had Alec and Adam in the car with me. We were en route to his endo appointment. I was very excited. I knew that his A1C, we had it checked in September. It had dropped. I was looking forward to seeing yet another drop now that he was on both the Dexcom and the Omnipod. Mm-hmm. We were having great success. We did not make it to the appointment. The last thing that I remember is we were driving and my car all of a sudden was not going straight. One of the boys asked me something. I have no memory of anything until I woke up in the hospital. I don't even know what day of the week it was. And I remember somebody telling me that we'd been in an accident and the boys had not made it.
I'm sorry. How long was it between the accident and when you woke up?
The accident took place on a Monday, and I have no memory of being in the accident. I have no memory of being picked up by an ambulance and being taken to the hospital. I think that my family said that they had tried to tell me several times. Obviously they had me pretty well medicated. Mm-hmm. I think it was the next day. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know how long it was. That's just the first memory that I have after the boys weren't with me anymore.
What were your injuries like?
I had fractures basically from head to toe, but they were all able to heal on their own. I didn't have to have surgery or anything like that. I had a brain bleed, just very sore.
Yeah. Well,
I was in the hospital for about a week, a little over a week, but everything healed up. There was some nerve damage to my face. The left side of my face is still a little bit numb, but nothing in compared to,
I don't know how to talk about it with you. I feel like what happened to you is probably, I mean, it's got to be one of the worst things that could happen to a person, right? I can't, as a person who has children, I'm hard pressed to imagine something worse. I don't know how you sent me that email or how you found the courage to come on and want to talk about this. I thought that it was a beautiful idea to talk about Adam and Alec a little bit, and try to remember and give perspective to that sort of thing. So I'd like to do as much of that as you're comfortable with, and if you can't answer a question, just say pass, and we'll keep going. I guess it's been over 3 years now. Is that right?
Yes, it was 3 years this past December.
Has it so far lessened in I'm assuming how painful it is? Does that get better?
Grief, I think, is just a very interesting thing. I cry just about every day still, not to the point where I can't function. I'm fortunate I have a job that I really love. It's good to be able to throw my mental energies into something that I'm passionate about and that I enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
But has it lessened? In a way, it seems like it was still just yesterday that this happened. There are moments where I just feel overcome. And I think the day that I sent you that email, I just was having a moment, and but I just was overwhelmingly grateful as I was thinking about it. I thought, Adam, we struggled with managing his diabetes, up until April of 2016, I guess. But I was just so grateful for the information that I was able to get through your podcast that I felt helped us give him the best chance at living in the best way possible for what we had no idea at the time would be his last few months of life. Yeah. So does it get easier? No. Has it lessened? I feel like I'm moving forward without as much shock, maybe. Not as much in a fog, but there are still moments where, I think any parent who's lost a child would say, and I anticipate this is going to be going on for the rest of my life, where you're overcome. You're overcome. How could this happen?
My son leaves for college, and for weeks and weeks after he leaves, my wife and I will kind of comment to each other. And it's hard to put into words, right? But the house feels different, I guess is the way people put it. But there's a palatable, sometimes it feels like air pressure to me, or I don't know how to describe how being in a space where he is or has been recently feels different than being in a space where he hasn't been recently. And I'm assuming that's as close as I can come to understanding what you're saying. Can I ask, you have a son, a third son, who's with you still?
Yes. Andy was not in the car at the time. And I think the only reason that he didn't come too is because he had basketball practice that day. He was 15 when our accident happened. He's now 18. And he's a senior in high school. And so he will be going off to college in a number of months.
With you tied to his belt, I'm assuming. A 3-foot rope, right? Right. Who's that lady behind you, Andy? Oh, it's my mom, Ann. She'll be in class today. How I guess, how did it impact him?
Andy is the most even-keeled child I think that exists. He obviously, going from a crazy, fun house full of energy to being the only one, difficult for him, obviously, but he is.
I used to hate ordering my daughter's diabetes supplies. I never had a good experience, and it was frustrating. But it hasn't been that way for a while, actually for about 3 years now, because that's how long we've been using US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys. They have served over 1 million people with diabetes since 1996, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. Find out why US Med has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau at usmed.com/juicebox, or just call them at 888-721-1514. Get started right now, and you'll be getting your supplies the same way we do. This episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox. And now we're going to hear from Medtronic champion Jalen.
I was going straight into high school, so it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult?
Unimaginable. I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school. I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling over an hour to the nearest endocrinologist for children. So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college, it's all I see. You can easily search Medtronic Champions. You see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that motivates me. I started embracing more, how I live with type 1 diabetes.
If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information.
The one that I feel like gives us strength in a way, gives me strength. He's, and I think I look back on it too, and I think, gosh, the first couple years especially, I was so wrapped up in my own grief. It took me a while to realize I need to be more present for him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know how to do that. He has been nothing but gracious in dealing with my shortcomings through that whole process. But he is continuing on, and he knows that both of his brothers have left a legacy, and he is very intentional about wanting to live to honor those legacies. And so I couldn't be prouder of who he is and who he's become. It's, something that has happened to him, but he's written, in some of his personal statements for college essays and things like that, that it's not something that defines him.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be a part of his story, but it's not. He's not victimized. Right. He obviously is going to be living with a big gaping hole for the rest of his life, but it's not anything that defines him.
So the three of you are supporting each other because each of you has a different tragedy. Really, it's as I'm sitting here thinking about it, he lost his brothers and then contact with you for a while, probably. There's just an overall change in what his life is. But then at the same time, you're dealing with losing Adam and Alec, and you're dealing with, I'm assuming, surviving an accident that they were lost in. Like, that's got to be, has to weigh on you as well, does it not?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Yeah, I don't know if there's more to that question. It's occurring to me as you're talking that, that's got to be the next thought, which is, it's survivor's guilt, right? Like, it's why me, why them, not me, et cetera. Like, that probably runs through your head a lot.
That's a question that has plagued me every day for the last 3+ years.
Yeah, it's just random. Do you seek, have you in the past, or are you now, do you talk to somebody, or do you kind of go back to your family for that support? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I did do some counseling for the first 2 years. I think that kind of ran its course. I have some amazing friends who continue to be just a wonderful support.
Can I interject and ask you, before you tell me about your journaling, is it just honestly something that no one else can really understand except someone who's been through it?
Yes. Is
that what you found through the counseling? That's kind of what I got in your pause. Like, what am I going to talk to a therapist about? That, you know what I mean? Because I find myself in the same situation right now. I'm like, I have nothing contextually to compare to what you're talking about. Nothing. And so I would think that trying to have that conversation with people who don't have that context must feel frustrating and fruitless. And, it's lovely to think that everything in the world can be explained away or gotten through or coped with. But I don't know. Like, I follow, I don't know if you've ever heard the episode with a woman named Lyndall Halver, who came on years ago, and
yes,
and her son passed away at school from, and I follow her on Facebook still, and she's very proactive about remembering her son. And at the same time, I just feel like this is something that fundamentally changes your perspective on life. And I don't see anything else that could bend you back to where you were before. I can't tell that that's a bad thing or not. I don't actually think it is. I think it's maybe sad, right, from the outside. But for you, I'm assuming you're not looking to forget your kids. And isn't that what feeling better feels like?
Yeah, and that's funny because I've always thought, since this happened, I don't want to feel better. And it's not even anything that I can really say I need to be able to make sense of this. There's nothing to be made sense of. That was part of what I kind of thought as I was going through the counseling is, what is the point? I just need to be able to put one foot in front of the other. I want to live well. I want to live in such a way that honors their memories. that would honor them, that would make them proud. But really, you're absolutely right. It's impossible to understand this. I mean, you think somebody that this has never happened to, you think, oh, this is the worst thing imaginable, and it is. I think that sometimes, people will look at me and they'll be like, oh, you're so strong or so courageous. And I don't have a choice. I mean, but I think I have come to know more parents than I would like to know who have experienced this type of thing. And I think there's just an instant bond that you have with people who have also lost a child or lost children. There's just, you relate to them on a level that, other people are not going to be able to understand. People can sympathize. Go ahead.
Does it feel like you're parenting their memories?
That's a great question.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I guess from my perspective, I feel like a really connected parent. I really enjoy having children. And so when they're with me or they're not with me, I'm always in some sort of a fluctuation of helping them or watching them for what they need next and trying to figure out how to help that, or, and no matter what that means, if it's just listening or being there or saying something or actually interjecting, like whatever it ends up being, I feel like that keeps happening. And when Cole went to college, I thought maybe that would happen less, but it doesn't. And I can't imagine I'm going to feel any differently when he moves out, or that I would feel any differently if he passed away. I can't imagine that I would feel any differently about that. And it just feels like that's what you should be doing, right? Like shepherding their legacy and still being parents to them. I don't know what else my life is for at this point. It's a very strange thing. I enjoy the things that I enjoy very much, but I don't know how I would feel if you could somehow flip a switch, take me being my kids' parents away from me, but leave me the memory of my kids. I'm not sure what I would do with that. So I think that whatever gets your one foot in front of the next one is valuable. I think that you should 100% live a really long life with as much happiness in it as you can find, and be a terrific parent to Andy. And I'm assuming you and your husband are together.
Yes,
yeah,
we are.
And be, be in that love and that relationship and all that other stuff. But I mean, I would think that there'd be a way to live well even, but I don't think there'd be a way to live like forgetting. You know what I mean? Like I've had a lot of terrible things happen to me that I don't think about anymore. But I don't think this one could be one of them. By the way, not for nothing, but how much better at this am I than your therapist was, right?
I was going to say, you should go into grief counseling or something.
Swear to God, I was like, I should at least get $40 for this. I just found myself thinking. And I've, by the way, Ann, found a way to put a laugh in the middle of this episode, which really is a bigger skill.
That was amazing.
I'm going to blow my nose now.
There you go.
Okay. Holy Christ. All right. Okay. So I'm going to go back to your note for a second. I'm assuming that as the days and the weeks pass and people feel like they want to help you, I want to ask first, before we get into what actually happened to you, and how community and friends and family got around you. But for anybody in this situation on the other side of it, what do people say that they think is helpful that really isn't? Got to be a couple sentences that stick in your craw, right?
Sure.
Can I guess one? Everything happens for a reason. Is that one of them?
That would be one. God must have needed them.
They're in a better place.
They're in a better place.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing is that, I probably said stupid stuff like that. I don't know.
To other people? Yeah.
to other people before this happened to me, I don't know what I would have said or what came out of my mouth or, I think
At least it's not cancer. We all say that about diabetes, right?
right.
So,
right.
And what is that? That's people in a moment uncertain of what to do with really well-intended people trying to find something
well-intended.
comforting
Yeah.
to say.
And that's what you just have to give grace because, people they're trying to make you feel better. They're trying to say something as inappropriate as it might be. They don't recognize that, and that's not their intent. And this has taught me to give a lot of grace throughout the last 3 years. But I truly am appreciative of the way that our friends and our community, family have just rallied around us, and continue to rally around us. So yeah, there are definitely some things that you don't want to say to a grieving person.
So what is the right thing to do? If I were to have met you in the weeks and months after that, what would the right thing to do have been, do you think? What's the best thing you could imagine? What happened to you that at least didn't make you think, oh, don't say that? Because I'm assuming nothing makes you feel better, right?
No,
right.
No, nothing could be said to ease any of the pain.
So it's just probably the quiet, right? A hug, like a hand on a shoulder, a glance, like those kinds of things are probably the only things people should even be. And who are they doing it for? Are they doing it for themselves or are they doing it for you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was even hard to have, we had so many people around us in the beginning. And I just, at the very beginning when this happened, I was just in a lot of physical pain. It was sometimes hard to have too many people around.
Mm-hmm.
I have, my memories are so foggy of those first few weeks. And I think in part because I had a bad concussion, I was on some medication. I think it was making me a little loopy. The whole first month was just, I have very little memory of it, honestly.
Yeah.
I do remember a lot of people. We had a lot of meals. We had a lot of visitors. And I was on autopilot during that time. Right. I think that probably the most helpful thing, as I look back on it, the most helpful thing was hearing memories of the boys, hearing what people remembered about them. And we had a number of, cards and letters and that I've saved to this day and will probably never get rid of. I think one of the most meaningful things was Alec's 4th grade teacher sent us 2 or 3 pages of just memories. She was a first-year teacher the year that she had him. Mm-hmm. And she had journaled very consistently throughout that first school year. And she sent us 2 or 3 pages of just memories of Alec. And I think more than anything, if somebody asks me what's the most helpful, tell me what you remember about my boys.
Yeah, because there's this, like right now, right now, everyone we know is right now somewhere else living a different life. Like even if it's for an hour or while they're at work or while they're at school, they're having these different interactions. They're making memories with other people. And if you stop and think about it, there's probably an infinite number of those memories out in the world that you're not aware of. And so for people to come tell them to you as stories is it sounds wonderful. Like it's no different than when you haven't seen someone in a while and you're like, hey, what have you been up to? You're asking like, what have you been doing while I haven't been in your physical space?
That's exactly right.
I'm interested, And so when all those people come in and offer those things, that's the comfort, but not in the beginning, right? Like we're not looking for a heartfelt Alec story in the first week or something like that. We're looking for people need to realize that this is, if they're going to be involved in your life still, which you hope they would be, that this is a long haul situation. It's not, do you find that people just wanted you to feel better? And like, did you have that feeling or could you not even feel that from other people?
Oh, no, we felt the grief and the shock and the prayers and the love. And I mean, we felt, we felt everything. And we continue to feel that. I think sometimes now that we're so far removed, I think some people think, oh, I shouldn't mention it. I'll make her sad. I'll make her cry. And that's really the complete opposite. I want to hear their names spoken. I want to hear what people remember about them. I want to hear the stories. I don't want them to go unmentioned at Christmas dinners and Thanksgiving dinners and birthdays. And
even if you do cry, that those tears come from like it's a happy memory then, right? You're not thinking,
exactly.
You're not in that moment thinking they're not here. You're thinking this is a happy memory.
Exactly. Nobody's making me more sad.
Right. Is it fair to say no one could do that to you? Like add to your sadness? Like it is what it is, right?
It is fair to say that. Yes.
So I have a couple of difficult questions before, not that every one of these hasn't been difficult, but I have two difficult questions. I don't know if I'll even, before we kind of move on, I want to hear about how Adam's family at school spoke about him. But it feels to me like I'm not really interested in digging into this because I don't think it's what we're talking about, but I feel like if I don't bring it up, people listening are going to wonder, but how has this affected your married relationship?
Yeah. Well, there's no greater trial that I think a marriage can go through. And that said, my husband has been amazingly supportive. He is the rock, has always been the rock of our family. We both, it's hugely interesting to see how differently we process grief. I am very much always wanting to see pictures and videos, and it's too painful for him to see them. As far as our relationship goes, it's still, I think we understand each other in a way that nobody else can.
Sure.
We have not been without our trials, but we're still hanging on. We'll have been married for 20 years this March. There are days when you wonder how much longer it's going to be, but
well, I will. The reason I asked is because it was happened to me early on when I became a stay-at-home dad and I had this little baby in front of me, and I recognized in my wife's eyes that I never really thought of it prior to the baby, right? Before the baby, like we were these two people who met each other and fell in love, and we were like the most important things to each other. And then as soon as the baby came, I realized that I was a guy she met. That was her son. You know what I mean? Like it's you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you see that, like I always felt like if I really screwed something up, I don't know how she would, forgive me. Now your thing was an accident, obviously, but it still takes a large amount of intellectual maturity to remember that, I would think. That's just how it occurs to me. I think it's very cool, and it makes me feel good that you guys are together and that you're working and that you're realizing that like this whole thing is just it's another process, and you can't rush through it, just like you can't rush through grief, or you can't, not to be ham-fisted about it, but there are people who sometimes I get notes from all the time. They're like, I just started listening to the podcast last week and my blood sugars aren't exactly where I want them yet. And I was like, yeah, well, you've only been at it for a week. Like it's going to take more time. Like you have to live in it to see where it goes.
Right.
I would think that would be, worth doing, I guess.
Yeah. We've people ask us that a lot, actually, because I don't know how many marriages survive after a tragedy like this. I don't know what the statistics are, but people will say, hey, you don't have much of a chance now.
Well, thanks, Sarah. Hey, listen, some of them do, right? You could be those people.
Right.
We all live like that. Like, it's so funny isn't it great when you watch people get married and they're all just like so happy and they're young, and I'm like, one in in every 2 marriages ends in divorce. Like, and so, and that's from stuff like, he wants to watch Netflix and I want to go dancing. That's right. a lesser conversation. But it would be it'd be silly to ignore it in this conversation. Like, you're not unaware of your life, and I'm not unaware of being married. So I was interested to know, and I wish you a ton of success. I hope it goes the right way. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So your note, which, with your permission, after you're not with me anymore, after you're off the recording, if it's okay with you, I'm going to read your letter. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
But I can't do it while you're here, just so you know. And I don't think you'd want me to. And it'll be less ugly if I do it while you're not on the recording. So, but I wanted to get your okay before I did that. So a number of months ago, when this letter came, some people might remember that I sort of very cryptically mentioned that we should try to do hard things. And that came from your letter. So I'd like you to tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So Adam was in 6th grade when the accident happened, and he had an amazing math teacher that year. Their class in November, December had been studying, learning how to plot X and Y coordinates. And the teacher had given them, I think it was intended to be kind of a fun, lighthearted assignment. It was in the month of December. He asked them to plot a cartoon character on a graph with the information that they had learned from this assignment, or from the lesson. So Adam, there were a number of choices, and the students had to go to the teacher and then get the information to plot based on the cartoon character that they wanted. So Adam he wanted Mario. He wanted to plot Mario, and the teacher initially was reluctant to give into that. I don't think he thought that Adam couldn't do it, but he wanted it to be kind of something fun and quick, and that wasn't going to be very time consuming. This one involved like quarter points or half points on the grid, so it wasn't a straightforward character.
Right.
So Adam asked. The teacher initially said no. He asked again. The teacher said no. He asked a third time, and the teacher was like, "Wow, Adam, okay, here, do Mario." So Adam did Mario. A few months after the accident, the teacher had been reflecting on that interaction, what had happened, and he put together, they framed Adam's drawing, or the final product that Adam had done, the Mario. They framed that. They framed the instructions that were very, very detailed, much more detailed compared to the other cartoon characters that the other students had done. And they had everybody sign it. They presented an amazing wall. It's now hanging on our front and center in our living room wall. It basically says, do hard things. That's the lesson, as the teacher reflected on all of this, that, he thought Adam didn't just settle for a super easy cartoon character. He wanted the hard one. He did the hard one, and he did it well. And the teacher knew, of course, of Adam's challenges, extra challenges with type 1 diabetes, what that presented. And, when he presented this to Arturo and to Andy and I, he basically said, we're learning from Adam. This is going to be his legacy for our class. He didn't shy away from doing hard things, neither with his diabetes nor with this Mario drawing. He knew what he wanted. He was determined, And the teacher just said, remember that as you go through your high school years, as you go through life, don't back away from doing what's hard.
It's rewarding. I'm looking at it while you're talking, and the message is rewarding. And I mean, I to take it a little farther, I feel like you have to know somewhere in the back of your mind that, none of your time is guaranteed. Like, we all sit around talking about like, oh, I'll make it till I'm 80, or, like blah, 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 or, everyone has that feeling. But the truth is that not everyone does. And you're not going to know who you are in that scenario ever. Right. So whether it's, Adam's years that he got, even at the end where it maybe was just a few months of him feeling better because his blood sugars were better off. Right. Like, maybe that was lovely, it would have been terrific if that went on for 100 years, but it was terrific that it went on for as long as it did. And, with all of us either living as the parents of children with type 1 or people living with type 1 themselves, I think you have to want for yourself for however many days between one and a bazillion that you get, you should want better for yourself, and it's not going to be easy, right? Like, it's not going to be easy. You have an extra challenge every day, and some days they're a lot worse than others. But I mean, unless you're not paying attention, and told you already, one foot in front of the other one, right? Like, every day's not great. Every day's not what you want it to be. Doesn't make it not incredibly valuable. Doesn't make it not beautiful or worth doing or worth living or sharing with someone else, even if it's for your memories or for what you might accomplish today. But you have to honor people like Adam that don't have the chance anymore, right? So do it for them. That's just how it occurs to me. It's how it occurred to me when I read your note, and I didn't know what you were going to say today. I didn't know what I was going to be able to say to you. I got incredibly nervous about 15 minutes before we were supposed to start talking. And I mean, I haven't been nervous doing this podcast once. And, I just didn't want to, I just felt like there's so much here. I wanted to make sure we unpacked it correctly, because at the end of your note, not that all of it isn't absolutely uplifting and soul crushing to read on the other side. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as I'm sitting and reading it, but when you got to the end, and I don't know if you still do this or not, but you still listen to the podcast?
I do.
All right. Now I'm going to cry. Hold on a second. God damn it. Go ahead.
This is very interesting. And, obviously when, in the 3.5 years that we were working with Adam and helping him to manage his type 1 diabetes, it's undoubtedly, of course, hard. It's very, very difficult. And there were a number of sleepless nights. I can recall when I would be sitting down right outside his room when we got the pump, and I was playing with the basal rates and trying to figure out, okay, from 2 to 3 o'clock, his sugar's going high, or from, 4 to 5, it's going low, and trying to make those adjustments and those tweaks to make it just perfect. And, it obviously is hard. It's something you wish that was not a part of your life. But strangely enough, I think after everything, I grieved the diabetes. I grieved not having that. And I don't know that we're completely done with it. And I've thought about, maybe fostering a child with type 1 diabetes. And I feel like I have this knowledge. I have some tools. I obviously am not perfect, but I know what to do.
Right.
And,
And listen, I got to tell you something. You're killing me. Okay. You're ripping my heart out here. I'm just going to, for a second, cause I don't know another way to couch the conversation. I'm going to make it about me for a second. Please, the people who think that I do that already, just shut up. We're doing something here. Okay. I thought maybe the podcast would help somebody, right? Like I thought maybe it could. I was hopeful that it would. It started proving itself out that way. It does every day. I never thought it was going to help you with that. You know what I mean? Like it just, I could not have planned for that. It just would have been no way. You know, try to imagine, 5 years ago, me thinking, I'm going to try to take my blog and, expand it into a podcast because, next year, some person's going to find it and then their son's going to pass away. And then she's still going to find connection to him through a podcast about diabetes. Like there's no way to imagine that. And so when I was reading your note, like that's the part that really, really got me. Like, I just was like, how are you still listening? And then when you explained it just now, I'm like, oh, that's how. Like I couldn't quite understand it in the note, but I 100% understand it while you're saying it. Diabetes sucks, but it was a thing you were doing with Adam, right? Like you had this connection to him through this thing. It was different than with your other two sons and with anybody else in the world. It's so easy to bemoan it, I guess, and for 1,000 good reasons, but you have a different perspective than most of us. And I mean, obviously we don't wish that perspective on someone else, but it's still a viable perspective. And the closest I've ever come to it, I think I wrote about it years ago, was that as much as I hate sneaking into Arden's room and testing her blood sugar when she's asleep, prior to CGM for sure, I realized one day that I get to hold her hand every day and I'm watching it get bigger and older. And it was a very small experience that most people don't have with their kids. And so I tried to find some sort of, trade-off in, from beauty to annoyance. Right. And I did. I think it's one of the things I'm really grateful for. When I lift her hand up, I know what it feels like and how heavy it is and how it's different from the day before. And you have all those connections too. I couldn't have imagined it. It's lovely, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, damn it. Yeah. Hold on, Ann. I'm blowing my nose again. All right, Ann, listen, we're up against an hour. One of us is going to have a stroke. So, let's make sure that, nothing's left unsaid. There's nothing that you really wanted to say, before we start saying goodbye.
Yeah. My encouragement, I mean, I love meeting people who have connections with type 1. My biggest encouragement to everybody in the type 1 community is, keep doing the hard things and be grateful that you still get to do them. Like I said, I don't know that type 1, I don't know that we're completely done with it. And I don't know how or, in what way we might continue to be involved. But I'm grateful, extremely grateful for the time that we had. I'm really grateful for what I learned through listening to hours and hours and hours of your podcast and how to help Adam live well in his last few months of life. I would give anything to be able to go through and have sleepless nights again every night. I'd give anything. But I think, Adam was definitely like his teacher pointed out, he left a legacy of doing hard things. And I hold on to that. And I continue to go through as a grieving parent and get up every day and do the hardest thing of going through life without them.
Oh, that is the strongest thing that I've ever heard anyone say or can imagine. So I think that's wonderful. I hope everybody heard that and it leaves them with a meaningful feeling that they don't escape. And, if you want to see, the impact that how diabetes is always around, while you're saying this beautiful thing, Arden's texting me, "Hey, it's lunchtime."
Oh.
And she's like, and I'm listening to you, and she's like, "I'm not that hungry, so what should we do?" And I was like, I think maybe we should do this and this. And she's like, "Okay." And then I asked her to have some juice earlier, and she didn't. And so her blood sugar hasn't gone up the way I wanted it to, but it hasn't gone down. So she's admonishing me in the text messages while you were saying these beautiful things. She says, "I never had the juice, by the way. I knew I didn't need it. You should listen to me more often." And I'm going to tell you, by the way, she did need the juice. What she just means is her blood sugar didn't get any lower than it was. And so now she's just, look at her. She won't stop. Like, I'm about to text her, just go eat and leave me alone.
Oh my goodness. Yes, those remind me quite a bit of my text exchanges with Adam.
Yeah, right? I got one from her this morning. I'm like, "Arden, set this," I'm trying to get her to set like a decrease in her basal. And she's just, doesn't answer me for 20 minutes. Then finally I get the what back, just what? And I was like, if I didn't need to say it to her so badly, I would just say, "What do you mean what?" Like, I'm always like, just scroll up a little bit. Like, couldn't you just scroll and go, "Oh, look, he just said it right before I said what"? She won't do it. She makes me say it again. I think it's my punishment somehow. I want you to, if you see fit, first of all, please accept my love and admiration and my good wishes, and share them with Arturo and Andy if you feel like that's appropriate, and don't if you don't. But I just really, I can't imagine that you said yes to this. And I want you to know why I asked. It was because I thought maybe it would be helpful for you to just be able to tell other people about Adam, and you're going to tell a lot of people this way. So it just I thought you'll say, I think I even said in my email, like, please say no if you don't want to do this. Don't feel any pressure to do it in any time frame. It could be years from now, like whenever you want or don't want. And you weren't going to do it at first, but can you tell me, as we're kind of saying goodbye, what changed your mind?
I just thought, what a way to honor Adam. And I think, any parent who has lost a child will jump at the chance to honor their child's legacy, to talk about their memories, to hear their names. And I guess I came into this phone call not really knowing
how it was going to go.
What could be said.
Yeah, right.
How it would go, or what could be said, or, what of value that that I would have. But, I don't know that there has been too much value, but I guess I keep going back to what I wouldn't give to go through the hard times all over again.
Right.
I
believe there is value in it, and we're going to find out very quickly, because I'm just putting this out. I can't stare at this in my folder. I can't. I'm not going to. So I'm gonna. It's going out right away so that I can sort of, just let it move on to somebody else and see what they can take from it. I mean, I would bet that there's a lot of good that comes from you sharing this, in not just for you and any cathartic feeling you might have experienced over the hour, but for people who are going to hear it. I think the message is there, like what wouldn't you do to have those experiences still, even though 5 minutes earlier they weren't the best experiences of your life. You described the day you was diagnosed as the worst day of your life, right up until something else proved out to be more impactful on you. So that's really something else. Okay. You're good. You don't want to tell a story, or I'm not trying to make you say anything. I just want to make sure you're good, right?
Yes, I am.
All right. Excellent. I genuinely appreciate you doing this. Thank you very, very much.
Sure. Thanks, Scott.
A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. Jalen is an incredible example of what so many experience living with diabetes. You show up for yourself and others every day, never letting diabetes define you. And that is what the Medtronic Champion community is all about. Each of us is strong, and together we're even stronger. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox and look out online for the hashtag Medtronic Champion. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast was sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today with US Med. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate your loyalty and listenership. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.